All right, so these are my actual vector shapes. I've got 3 of them. This is my onion-skinned layer, which is kind of giving me a guideline. This is it underneath, right? And that helps to have that one at 100% opacity underneath for stealing colors from. Now, I'm looking at my design and I'm seeing this nose could maybe be a little different because I can always free transform it. And now I'm just going to use simple shift and just shrink it a little bit so it's about there. And then maybe I can raise it up a little bit here. Maybe up quite a bit. And it looks like a nice kind of sausage. And it looks pretty good, except it's a little bit curved differently here than it is here. So I'm going to try building it in a different way. I'm going to make a new shape, and I'm going to use a rectangle this time. Put the rectangle right there. And then I could add a circle layered right over the rectangle and make it 2 shapes that are the same color. Or I can go to Edit, Free Transform, because though a rectangle seems really simple, if I warp it, it gives me some opportunities to curve it. And then I can bend it down at these edges. Now the benefit of doing it this way is that I know the sides of this are straight. And I try to make this kind of rational. And then I can hit return. And then I can do free transform again. Because look what happened when it did that. I like Photopea for this reason. It actually shows me all those anchor points that it created just from that little warp I did. So warp creates a lot of anchor points. So now I do edit, free transform, or option command T. And now if I distort it, I can play with that curve. And if I warp it, I can make it more curvy like that until it's what I want. So then I can decide, do I want to do it that way by warping one edge of a rectangle? Do I want to do it this way by just kind of straightening the sides with warp of an oval? Or do I want to do it as a compound, which would be layering multiple paths together? So first the rectangle. Let's make it that skin color by double clicking and then just clicking on that skin color. And now how do I get a half circle? Well, it's actually very simple. I just use the circle tool, line it right up at the edge of my rectangle, hold down shift, and it'll give me a perfect circle. Then go right to the other edge. And now I just use my move tool to move it down into place. Why is it grabbing both of them? So that is what's called a compound path. Let me try that again. I'm going to make the circle. You don't want to make it right on top and within another shape. Then I use the move tool. You want to try to keep them all separate so that you can have the most control of them. And then I'm just going to use option command T and just scale it up so that these shapes perfectly overlap each other. Like so. So that when you don't have the vector ridge there, they look the same. And if it's not exactly perfect, that's okay. I'm going to shift it over by 1 pixel. There we go. All right, so there's lots of ways you can kind of creatively get the shape you want. And then if I want to move it together, I can do that. Now I'm getting a little bit away from my guideline sketch, so why don't I bring in my other one as a guideline sketch? Because this is closer to the character I want to do for this children's book, this Professor Wormbog. So now it's in there. Hit return. I'm going to make a duplicate of it, Command J, move one to the bottom, just like I did with my screen grab. And the one on top, I'm going to onion skin by going to about 30%. And then hit the padlock to lock it. Okay, now I've got these shapes, and they're the right shapes, but they're in the wrong place. So what am I going to do? I'm going to get rid of the noses I don't want. Whoops. Just by deleting. And I'm going to select all these shapes by holding down Shift or clicking on them each with Command. And when I have all the shapes, I can move them all together. I'm going to line up that eye, for instance. And then if I click on individual layers with my Move tool, I can move them individually. So I've got this circle. And this circle, I think I want it to be kind of a bluish shape. Bluish gray, something like that. And now I'm going to duplicate this circle to make the inside circle that's darker brown. So how do I duplicate? What's the Command key shortcut to duplicate? Command J. You're going to use it a lot. So Command J gave me a perfect copy of this. Then I do free transform, edit free transform. And I'm going to change its color before I do that so I can tell what I'm doing. Make it a dark brown, like so. And now, Option Command T to free transform. I'm going to hold down Option, and that's going to shrink it from every side, like that. Okay, next, those are two perfect circles, perfectly nested into each other, even if my sketch is off. Then I'm going to use the Move tool. I'm going to grab the nose, but wouldn't it make sense to move the nose and the circle as part of the nose? So I'm going to hold down Command and select both of these. Right? So they're both highlighted. Then I can move them together into place, like so. Okay, now I want a little eyeball or eye pupil inside of the white eye. So I'm just going to select that white, just like I did with the circles on the outside. I'm going to duplicate it. What's the duplicate? Command J. Change its color to black so I can see it. So that just gave me a perfect copy of the white. Now it's black. Now I'm going to do edit free transform. And I'm going to scale it, but instead of scaling it from the corner, I want it to grow right into the middle. So I'm going to do Option and then drag it down so I know it's perfectly centered. These are just little tricks that help with flat graphics, which often use symmetry, often use perfect circles, perfect squares. And if I turn off my raster layers, those are the vector shapes I have so far. Yes? So on a PC, it's Control. On a Mac, it's Command. So if you're using a PC computer, whenever I say Command for the Mac, you use Control. So it would be Control J. Yeah, so your keyboard's different. But if you look at the Mac keyboard, the Command key's right next to the spacebar. It's because Steve Wozniak and what was it? Steve Jobs and something Wozniak. And when they came up with Apple, it was all about being anti-corporate, anti the man. So instead of a control function, they wanted to give you a command. So it's one of the ways they're still different. All right. And it will always teach you that in the shortcuts within Photopea. So this little symbol means on a Mac command, but on a PC it means control. All right. Moving on. How do I get these crazy mustache shapes, mustachio shapes? Yeah, let's try doing an oval, like a long oval, right? And then just tilting it. Whoops. Got to go to the Move tool to move it, instead of drawing a new shape on top of it. And that works pretty well. Can free transform it, get the angle right. Remember, it's just like cutting outs of paper. So as long as you have them in the right order, like what's on top of what, doesn't matter. Okay, now how can I get it a little pointier? I can warp it. It would be better to warp it when it was straight up and down rather than tilted. So let me go Command Z back before I rotated it, right? So now when I do free transform and warp, I have a little bit more options at the sides because it's in the square transform box. So what I can do is just pull this out and then kind of flatten it in from the sides to make it a little bit sharper. Now warp gives you full command on both sides. Okay, now I do Option Command T again, and I'm just going to rotate and scale. So once I kind of get that shape, that looks pretty good. Maybe I want to warp it a little bit more. So I can Option Command T again, warp. I'm just going to bow it out a little bit there and there. And then Option Command T. So you can do it in several stages to get exactly what you want. So warp's going to be really handy, but you have to try not to do too much all at once. If I want to narrow it, hold down Shift, kind of squeeze it in. But it'll give me very regular shapes. Whether they match my sketch or not, these are very kind of rational shapes. Okay, now I need to move that shape up, right? But I need it underneath my nose, and I need it a different color. I'm going to choose like a pale gray color. Like that. Now let's see if I turn off my raster layers, what I have. These are the shapes I have. So this is something that's incredibly helpful. We've learned how to duplicate. We've learned how to free transform. I'm going to duplicate this one and flip it so it's exactly symmetrical. And then I'll pause it. So how do I do that? First I duplicate by selecting the layer and then Command J. Got a duplicate. Now I'm going to free transform that duplicate with Option Command T, or on a PC, Option Control T. And then I'm going to right click and say flip horizontal, and then I just move it over to line up. There we go. Almost there. I got to move it a little bit closer just to match. Then hit return. So now I've got those, right? Now I need this little sack of baggy skin under the eye. What can I do for that? I'm actually going to take this circle and duplicate it. Command J, move it up. I'm just on the move tool. Option Command T, free transform, stretch it with the Shift button so it can stretch out. Sink it inside here. There we go. Now I got to put that underneath the eyeballs. So instead of just dragging it down, I can also use a shortcut for moving layers up or down. That is Command for a Mac, Control for a PC, left bracket. It's right underneath the minus sign. So Command minus zooms out. Command plus zooms in. Command left bracket moves your layer down. Command right bracket moves your layer up. So I want it right about there. Oops. Now let's see what it looks like. Yeah, getting there. All right, next. Well, let me pause it. All right, now in the next video is going to be the harder stuff. Things like the hat and the little eyepiece. But I've got